person not get degraded. Tato, thereafter, tato yati, that person goes to, attains, param gatim. Param is supreme, gati is the destination. Tato yati param gatim. Samam pashyan hi sarvatra. Samavasthitam ishwaram. Na hinastyatmanatmanam. Tato yati param gatim. Samam pashyan hi sarvatra. Samavasthitam ishwaram. Na hinastyatmanatmanam. Tato yati param gatim. We recite now together 3 times. Samam pashyan hi sarvatra. Samavasthitam ishwaram. Na hinastyatmanatmanam. Tato yati param gatim. Samam pashyan hi sarvatra. Samavasthitam ishwaram. Na hinastyatmanatmanam. Tato yati param gatim. Samam pashyan hi sarvatra. Samavasthitam ishwaram. Na hinastyatmanatmanam. Tato yati param gatim. Thank you. So this verse comes in the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. I'll try to write or draw some things to illustrate what is going on and what concepts that I'll speak. So let's see what the verse is saying. Samam pashyan hi sarvatra. So first line talks about equal vision. And how can we have an equal vision? Right now we look at around each other. Some of us are taller than others. Some of us are fairer than others. Maybe some of us are, apart from externals, each one of us wearing different clothes. Each one of us has our different personalities. We all come from different backgrounds. So in what way can we have an equal vision? Samam pashyan hi sarvatra. That equal vision is samavasthitam ishwaram. That is equal vision. God is in everyone's heart. God is equally in everyone's heart. Samavasthitam ishwaram. So every person is a precious part of Ishvara, of Krishna. Everyone is loved by Krishna. So we see there is definitely difference among people. But here the Gita is saying, see beyond the difference to the similarity, the equality, by seeing that God is situated in everyone's hearts. So God, and then what will happen by this is 2 results. So if we consider the line, this is line A, verse has 4 lines, A, B, C, and D. And it says, that if we can see that God is situated in everyone's hearts, it says that our mind won't make our relationships worse. And not having a pen, that's my excuse for my poor handwriting. So this is C. Our mind won't make our relationships worse. Na hinastya atmanatma. And that is, the negative won't happen. Negative, it won't happen. But there's a positive that will happen. And what it says is, this is the D part of the verse. Tato yati param gatim. Will attain supreme destination. So it can seem a very philosophical and abstract verse, but let's try to understand these 4 points. The equal vision based on understanding that God is in everyone's heart. That will help us in our relationship. We won't make things worse, but we'll rise higher. So how does this happen? What is this talking about? So basically, when we interact with people, there are two kinds of people in the world. Some people bring happiness wherever they go, and some people bring happiness whenever they go. So, some people will look forward to their arrival, and some people will look forward to their departure. And now, we could say if we have a spectrum of relationships, in our relationships, there'll be some people whom we look forward to, and some people we just don't. Now, we may want to have only the first category of people with us. But the point is, life doesn't work like that. And people also are different. Sometimes the same person, some side of that person we like very much, other side we don't like at all. So this positive negativity, it applies not just to other people, it applies also to us. There are some sides of us which others may like. And there are some sides of us which others may dislike. So in such a situation, samavasthitameshwar, that this person is in my life, this person is acting in a particular way. That is the specific word used for God is Ishwaram. And what does Ishwara mean? Controller. Samavasthitameshwar. That means if some person is acting in a hurtful way, some person is acting in a mean way, no, even in that situation, God is still in control. That does not mean God wants that person to do the bad thing, but God is allowing that person to do it. And there must be some reason. There is something I can learn and some way I can grow. If you understand this, then you'll be able to respond in a constructive way. If we just think that you did this to me, so I'll do this to you, then it will just make things worse. Especially in our close relationships, if we start keeping track of everything wrong that everyone has done, how will we continue? I was with one person and he said, I want to talk with you. Quite an intelligent person, very successful. He's a lawyer. But he said, I'm very disturbed. Why is that? No matter what I do, no matter how much I succeed, people just don't respect me. And then he was a close friend of a devotee. So the devotee requested me to spend some time with him. So I started talking. And he spent almost 45 minutes talking about right from his childhood when he was 4 years old. Now, a list of all the people who had disrespected him. So I said, yes, we spent 45 minutes right now. We talked about so many people, down the list of all the people who disrespected him. Are you kidding? Just got started. Now, so then I said, have you kept a list of all the people you have disrespected? No, I don't disrespect it. Really? That actually indicates a very great level of lack of self-awareness. It could be that sometimes we are disrespected by others, and could be that we are disrespected more. But we also disrespect. So the point is that if in our life we start keeping a catalog, you did this to me at that time, and you did this to at that time, and you did this to at that time, and how much are we going to keep track of this? Life is meant for something bigger than just keeping track of all the wrongs that others do. Here I'm not talking about somebody doing some brutal crime or something like that. I'm talking about in our normal relationships, we all make mistakes. We all sometimes hurt each other. And if we start making our relationships into an account of, you did this to me, so I'm going to do this to you, then we will not have any peace in any of our relationships. So the idea is that I am here, another person is here. So in this relationship, so okay, you did this to me, so you slapped me, so I slapped you. You spoke one harsh word to me, I spoke one harsh word. Well, that may happen But that cannot be the defining basis of the relationship. We need to have a common purpose, a higher purpose for which we work together that unifies us. Yes, we all may sometimes hurt each other. But if you can see that when this person is happening, let my action be not determined simply by this person's action. What do I mean by that? Let me give an example. Suppose there is a say a cloth shop in which there is an attendant and then there is a customer. Now, normally, whenever a customer comes to a shop, there are multiple attendants. All the attendants might come there. They can make a sale and that comes on the record. They get some credit. But suppose some customers are known to be very fastidious, very demanding. They go to a shop and they look at 100 clothes and they don't buy anything. And not just once, they do it repeatedly. Then what happens is, normally when a customer comes into a shop, the attendants come towards the customer. But when such a customer comes in, all the attendants go away. So now, suppose such a customer is there. And we are talking with, the attendant is talking with the customer. The attendant is trying to be polite, but the customer is demanding and rude and insulting. Disrespecting the attendant, disrespecting the clothes, disrespecting the shop, trashing everything. So the natural impulse of the attendant will be to snap back. But suppose there is like a CCTV camera and the attendant knows that the boss is watching. The attendant knows that my salary is not coming from this customer, is coming from my boss. And then the attendant tries to act in as polite and as helpful a way as possible. The customer is still too cross, gruff, and goes away and doesn't buy anything. But the boss has been watching. And the boss comes and tells the customer attendant, you know how to deal with difficulty. You're good. I will make you in charge of this whole floor and you train other attendants how to deal with difficulty. So what happened over here is, in this particular interaction with the customer, there was a failure that it was not able to make the sale. But in terms of the interaction with the boss, the boss is sitting here. With that person, there is a success. So similarly, when we become spiritually minded, what happens is, it is not just for us, it is not just we and the other person. We understand that for us as devotees, there is a third person in our relationship. Who is that? Krishna. That is Ishwaram. So when we act, when somebody does something to us, and when we are deciding how to respond, we don't just consider, you did this to me, so I do this to you. We think, how can I act in a way that will please Krishna? How can I serve Krishna in this situation? How can I act in harmony with Krishna? What would Krishna want me to do in this situation? But that does not mean that if somebody is abusing us or trampling over us, we simply let them walk over us. No. There can be time when we have to also stand up to others. But our action is not determined only by that person's action. Our action is determined by our connection with Krishna. So this understanding, some of us become Ishwara. Then what it says is, na hinaste atmanatmanam. You yell at me, I yell at you, and then I throw something at you, you throw something at me. And then two civilized people just end up quarreling or fighting like completely uncivilized people. What is happening in this case, that person has become has morphed into a worse version of themselves. Krishna says, If you can remember that Krishna is in control, that Krishna is right now there, no heinous there, we won't make choices that will make our situation worse. Or at least we won't make choices that will sully our own character. Like if somebody insults us, well, we can very well insult them back. One time, one devotee came to me and he said, I have a serious philosophical question. Okay. Now, if I insult someone and that person doesn't understand the insult, then do I get the karma for having insulted him? I told him, if you are already conscious of karma, then why do you have to insult someone? In general, consequences of our action, or how much we are accountable for our action, it depends on three things: the action itself, the consequences of the action, and the intent of the action. If you had the intent to insult, then they are culpable. Of course, if you've hurt the person, the culpability may become more. But the point is, I insult you and you insult me, and life is not meant to be a mutual insult tournament, isn't it? The higher purpose. Okay, I just brush it off and move on with my life. So that at least my language, my behavior doesn't become worse. And when we focus on Krishna, how can I please Krishna in this situation? Then by that vision, our relationship with Krishna becomes Krishna becomes pleased with us. And we grow spiritually. Just like the boss awarded the attendant who was cool with the tough customer. Similarly, for us, Krishna awards us. We grow in our spirituality. We gain wisdom. We gain inner strength. And this is where one of the key things required is tolerance. Now, tolerance is often a misunderstood virtue. Now, tolerance is not passivity. It is not, oh, whatever anyone does, I just let them walk over. Tolerance is actually persistence. I'll explain how. Tolerance means for all of us, there are some things which are less important and some things that are more important. So tolerance means to keep small things small so that we can focus on the big things. I'll repeat this. The tolerance has two parts to it. Does anyone remember what I said just now? Yeah, but just after that, what I said. Tolerance means to keep
the small things small.
That's a good memory. Small things small. And then you want to keep big things
on purpose.
Big. Now, this is how we normally want to function in life. Say, if we are having if we have gone to a particular party or a get together to meet a very important person, then, and somebody else wants to come and talk with us. It's just a casual acquaintance. Now, if we may just politely greet them, but we won't spend all our time. And this person is not that important. So we polite, it's a small thing, keep it small. Big thing is I want to meet this person. I want to spend some time. The normal working of life is where we can keep small things small and we can keep big things big. So these two we can say are at one level independent. They both are required. Keep small things small, keep big things big. But tolerance is the virtue that where the first enables the second. Because there is a tendency within us to make small things big. Make small things very big. And that is the tendency of the mind. The mind tends to overreact. The mind tends to hyperventilate. Exaggerate reaction. One of my friends in Canada practices family law. Now, family law basically means that it is specialized in divorce. Polite way of family law. So, I was telling people that when they divorce, it's shocking how trivial reasons they can have for divorce. Because one time one couple came and they said, We want to separate. It's mutually agreed separation. Says why? Says because we can't agree what temperature to keep of our AC in our house. Okay. But that's inconvenience. And we have to adjust. Maybe somebody has to wear more warm clothes. Something has to. But is that something worth ending a relationship over? Or sometimes small things can become very big. And like a person meets another person after 25 years. First thing is, you took $25 from me and you're not returned it. Okay, for 25 years, you're still remembering that. Okay, yeah, it's good if that person will return. But that is the prominent emotion and that is the prominent memory that one has stored for 25 years. Our brain has so many better things to do than store such a small memory for such a long time. So if we lack tolerance, then we end up letting small things become big. And many times when relationships go down, I'm not saying that all relationships deteriorating is because of this. Sometimes there are big things that are problems, but many times we let small things become very big. So tolerance means to keep small things small so that we can focus on big things. So now there are among big things also there can be multiple levels of big things. Like I said, say for example, if actually on Australia, I was giving once a class on tolerance. And after that, one devotee or one person in the audience who like really hears class attentively and comes back and asks some clear questions and sometimes gives some constructive feedback. So after this class, I give a class on tolerance. He was sitting behind. I asked, it was a great class. I got to practice what you speak. Wondering, did he meant he had to tolerate my class? So he understood what I was thinking. I didn't want to ask that. He said, actually, what happened was I was sitting behind because I came a little late, and the person sitting next to me was constantly talking on the phone. And I got very annoyed by that. But then I thought, let me tolerate this. Now, is that something to be tolerated? Well, if you're coming for a class, the big thing is you want to hear the class, you want to understand the class. That's why we invested the time. So at that time, tolerating a person talking constantly in a class it is not keeping a small thing small. It is letting a big thing, it is letting a small thing interfere with the big thing. You may tell the person, can you please go out and talk? Or you move somewhere else. You don't have to sit. So tolerance is not passivity. We need to understand what is more important and what is less important. So in general, for this, we need our intelligence. One of the things that the mind does is it changes the size of things for us. It makes big things small, it makes small things big. That's why we need to regularly reinforce our intelligence. Our mind is the part of us which is impulsive, which is short-sighted. So what the mind does is, the mind, it makes small things big. Did this to me and that did that. Because did this to me and that. Like that. Small things can become very big. On the other hand, what it does is, big things, it makes it small. So there's a friend of mine who was working, he was a doctor and he was working in the emergency. And he's also a big cricket fan. But there was some Pakistan, some cricket match going on about a few months ago, maybe a few years ago, I don't remember exactly. But then he was supposed to be monitoring a person who was in the ICU, who was very critical. It was not emergency, he was working in ICU. But then he was watching the cricket match and looking at the cricket score and he completely forgot about it. And then that person who had some kind of cardiac arrest or something, like a big beep started coming and I started coming. He was so immersed in the cricket match, he didn't even notice the beep. And then somebody with the other wing, they heard the wing kept running. So they to lose their life because. But that is the nature of infatuation. That is the nature of obsession. So now cricket is fine as a form of entertainment, but sometimes we become too obsessed with it. Then a small thing can become big. And that's why, okay, if you are in your job, you have to remember the job is more important. So small things can become big and big things can become small. So if when this happens, our intelligence is required to resize things. Resize things so that they align with reality. And some of us the issue. So the Bhagavad Gita, the book that can help us strengthen our intelligence.
Why have you used color pen?
Study wisdom takes like the Bhagavad Gita. So the Gita, what it does is
You're using pencil on the book.
strengthens our intelligence. It gives strength to
No,
our
black
intelligence.
pencil only, which you can erase.
Then
Which you
when the
can't.
mind is distorting the size of things, the intelligence can resize those things. So that this is small, this is big. And this is especially important in relationships. Of course, here there's an important thing to understand that na hinaste atmanatmanam, that a mind won't degrade us. Tato yati param. Then we can attain the supreme stage. We can develop our relationship with Krishna. Ultimately, each one of us is a soul. And as souls, we have an eternal relationship with Krishna. And that, you could say, I'm here. And we say, there are my family members, there are my friends, there are my acquaintances. All these are around us. And we have some relationship with all of them. Could have some closer relationship with relationship, relationship. But we have an earning relationship with Krishna.
Yeah.
All these others are non-eternal.
It's fine. So
This
this
does not mean they are not important.
correct.
But they are not all. So for us as individuals, the
This
most important relationship is our relationship with Krishna. That
No, not really.
source of our stability.
This will be there.
People may come in our life and go. Sometimes the same person may be pleased with us. Pleased with us.
This
That person may also go through their moods. And if
it
we
will become like this.
be
This
defined
will come up.
solely by our
This
relation,
goes on
any
top,
of our
this goes on the other
horizontal relationship. These are horizontal relationships.
same
We
for
are
this.
souls. People around us are also souls. So if we let ourselves be defined only by our horizontal relationships, then we set ourselves up for insecurity.
This will be meeting that one.
And sometimes some relationships
This will
go through
meeting this
difficult
one.
phases.
Can you imagine that?
And if that relationship is
How
the
is
only
it?
relationship that defines us, then that relationship going through a difficult phase.
Yeah, this is true. This is correct. You can't have this meeting this and this meeting this as well. This is correct.
So
Can you imagine this one?
I have written a book on reincarnation, demystifying reincarnation. So I gave a talk on reincarnation and various logical and empirical evidences pointing to reincarnation. So after that, one young man came to me. I have a serious reincarnation related question. Okay. I'm in love with a girl. And she also loves me. But somehow, families are not agreeing.
Right, this is right.
So I don't think we can be together.
Yeah, correct.
Can you tell me what I can do by which I can marry her in my next life? Now, for him, it is a very serious question.
That's okay.
But the point is, what has happened is, he
Same
is taking the relationship.
Okay, now look at it.
He's taking that relationship and he's projecting on the next.
The black is on the top.
Internalizing what is.
Yeah. So this is pointing toward the black hole. Toward the black.
He's trying to eternalize
Cool.
a non-eternal relationship.
So
sometimes people are in a relationship.
you're not sitting there, you take a pillow. Why are you wearing pajama ulta? You want to cover your leg?
Makes themselves be defined solely by one relationship.
Okay.
Every
Yeah.
relationship defines.
Now, you've done it already.
Our primary
Okay.
our
Do the
primary
next one.
self-definition
Because
comes from our vertical nature.
shall we do it now? Or when you finish, tell me.
So Krishna, even sons or daughters, even husbands or wives, even mothers or fathers, even brothers or sisters, even colleagues, friends, all these are relationships with that foundation. So this relationship gives us a certain sense of stability. And with that stability, then we don't get so affected by the ups and downs in our life. So I'll make two more points and then we can open for questions. Till now I talked about how having that vertical relationship, focusing on in our relationships, how can I keep the more important, less important, less important. That is all. The one way of doing it is we strengthen our relationship with Krishna. We have our sadhana, we come to satsanga, we do our puja, by which we stick in. We understand whatever is going on in this relationship, maybe this person is very well, this, and this is going on. Let me ask you the way that I can please Krishna, and Krishna will be one of these things. So that's one understanding. Now, I put the same thing in a slightly different way. So here is Krishna. Here there is me. Right? And here there is the other person. So now we can say that this is our relationship. That is our primary relationship. Which I put the number one. And this is our relationship with that person. And this is that person's relationship. So the first part I took was about till now, I talk about how spirituality can positively affect our relationships. Now I talk about how spirituality is sometimes negatively affected and how we can prevent it. So sometimes what happens is if we start developing our relationship with and we start practicing bhakti and we realize its importance. And then we want our loved ones also to practice. And that's natural. We also want their welfare. So we want them to practice. So we have developed one, and we already have two. We have a relationship with Krishna, we have a relationship with our partner or children or parents or friends, whatever. And then we want three to be. We want them also to have a relationship. Now the ideal situation is if 1, 2, and 3 all develop. Now we go closer to Krishna, they also go closer to Krishna. In that process, we also get one more common thing as we are closer to each other. And this happens for many people. And that happens that can make the whole relationship very sweet and sublime. As if a family that prays together, stays together. So this is excellent. It happens. But sometimes it may not work. Sometimes the other person is not interested. So they are not interested in it. And then what we try to do is we try to force. And I talk about later what too much is and what is not too much. Later. But right now, if we push them too much, then what happens is that in trying to develop the three, our two gets weaker. In every relationship, there is something that we do for the other person. That is our contribution to the relationship. And there is something which we expect from the other person. That is our expectation. So generally, a relationship is healthy when the contribution and the expectation are more or less similar. I feel that I'm doing something for the other person, and the other person is also doing something. But if in a relationship, we feel that I am doing so much for the other person, the other person is not doing anything for me, then we start that relationship, feeling that relationship very straight. So sometimes when we start practicing spirituality, start practicing bhakti, unfortunately what happens is our contribution in the relationship goes down and our expectation goes up. That means we start feeling that, oh, I have to go to satsang, I have to do this seva. I don't have time. And then we say, oh, this is just all mundane, we're just wasting time. And then we increase our expectation. You come to the temple, you do this, you don't do this, you do this. And that creates a strain. So, in trying to get 3 to increase, what happens is 2 starts decrease. In our relationship with the other person, there's a strain. And when there is tension in any important relationship, then our relationship, if we have had some quarrel, there's a hot war or a cold war at home, then you sit down to chant the holy names. How much can you focus on it? Even if you're doing some puja, how much can you focus? In this situation, if you put too much pressure on the other person to develop a relationship with Krishna, that backfires on both our relationship with them and our relationship. So if that's such a thing is happening, then what do? The best thing to do is what Krishna recommends. Krishna says in 3.26 in the Bhagavad Gita, Na buddhi bhedam jani ajnanam karmasya joshayet sarva karmani vidwan. Krishna says that even if we assume that even if say I am enlightened, it's very difficult to say that we are enlightened, but even if we assume that, okay, and even if I am detached, and say assume the other person is ignorant and the other person is attached. Krishna says, so this is me, this is the other person. So Krishna says, that means even if I know what is, I'm trying to do what is right, and the other person is doing something is wrong, or at least not so right. So he says, even then, no buddhi bhedam jani. Don't disturb the other person. Joshayet. Joshayet means engage appropriately. Engage appropriately. What does this mean? It means, go back to this particular relationship, we understand that it is not that we who are going to help that person develop a relationship. That person already has a relationship. Maybe they're not acting in that relationship, but Krishna is still in that person's heart also. When I was introduced to Bhakti 25 years ago or so, when I was studying my engineering, so I was very enthusiastic. And then one of the first people that I was introduced to, I asked, how can I make my father into a devotee? How can I preach to my father? So I still remember this. Sannyasi answer by letting anyone except you preach to them. Because I grew up in a traditional society, and it's not that I only expected to instruct this. So as long as I was trying to push my father, I was just resisting. But as soon as I just got out of it. I connected my father with the local temple where he found like-minded people. He found people of his age group. He found people from his own professional background. And he started practicing bhakti at his place. So sometimes we need to give others space to develop them. It is not like we are the sole person doing it. Krishna has a plan for them. Samavasthitam Ishwar. Krishna is in control even in their hearts. Krishna knows where they are, and Krishna will come. So if this is happening where because of too much pressure on 3, 1, and 2 are also going down, then what do? We treat these 3 relationships as independent. That means make sure space we have space for one. We have our time and our space for our practicing. And also give time for two. Don't just consider it as Monday. Whatever we would be expected to do if we were a responsible person in that relation. Generally, the kind of society we live in nowadays, if we don't force anything on the other person won't force much on us. If we are not forcing them to practice bhakti, it's very rare that they will stop us from going to a temple or practicing. So if we give them space, we develop 3 qualities. Then we focus on one and we give them time to. gradually this is that if our relationship with that person improves, if they start seeing, they become more understanding, they become more calm, they become less short-tempered. They change for the better. And how you change for the better? Yes. What was different between you now and what was before? Is you are the people. And then it will be that will attract them toward it. Okay, this can change you for the better. And this will change you. Sometimes when we start practicing bhakti, we want to share bhakti with everyone. And we want to really invite other people for our programs, we want to give books. And it's good. It's nice that we can share that. But it's important that it should not be at the expense of the relationship you already in. There's an American comedian who said, I love humanity. It is just human beings I can't get along with. Now, what does that mean? Just to say, when the abstract statement, I love humanity, it does not take any price. But it's only when you interact with human beings that things become messy. And we have to tolerate, we have to sacrifice, we have to adjust. And it is through that we grow as individuals. So it is that way very easy to preach to everyone else. We preach and we inspire people and we get people to listen. That's good. But often the effects of our bhakti is also how we connect with people in our relationships. Our bhakti should be able to make us more responsible. The more responsible does not mean that we give up our relationship with others. We make time for them, but we also make time for our horizontal relationship. And when we do this, we will find that Krishna works in his own ways. Generally, it is that we start thinking that it is my responsibility alone to do this. If I don't tell this person to read Bhagavad Gita or chant or this or that, how can I do this? Do something for Krishna also. You don't have to do everything. Krishna has a so I'll make one last point and you can have questions. You're talking about in general, everyone needs a little push. Because we have so many things going on in our life. We tend to be lethargic about the bigger questions, the bigger issues of life. So, pushing, it is something necessary. But we have to see what is the pushing doing. Is the pushing taking the person toward Krishna, or is the pushing taking the person away from Krishna? Are we pushing them forward, or are we ending up pushing them back? So, for me, in the project, look at this. We can help the unable, but we can't help the unwilling. So, suppose somebody is trying to drive a car. In India, at least I've seen this happen. I don't know if it happens here in America or in UK here. But you're trying to drive a car, the car doesn't start, and then you call people around you, should you please push this car? That doesn't happen here, so nobody will come to push the car or they'll ask get a car or something like that. But at least in the past will happen. They ask people and people are okay and help you. They can't push the car. Now the person inside is trying to move the gear and change and try to get the car started. People outside are pushing. And together then get the car in. And the car starts. That's fine. But suppose people from outside are pushing the car. And the person inside the car has gone to sleep. Or what is it, the person inside is pressing the brake? Then what is the point of pushing it? So sometimes so if circumstantially, if they have some misconceptions, if they have some apprehensions, because of which they are not able to connect with Krishna, then we can try to address this some misconceptions that are those apprehensions. That's like they also want to move the car, but they're not able to. But sometimes they just don't interest. That does not make them bad person. That just means that they're not yet learning. Everybody is at a different stage in their spiritual journey. A spiritual journey often goes over multiple lifetimes. And we are at one stage and they are at another stage. So if they're not ready, we are pushing them, then you might just be wasting your time. Not just wasting our time, you might be actually harming that relationship. So, okay, we accept that they're doing it like this. Act responsibly in that relationship and be it the Krishna works in all ways. If we have this patience, so I conclude one definition of humility that Bhaktivinoda Thakur says. Humility means to not have expectations from others. This is actually a very difficult definition of humility. And you could also say that it's natural to have expectations. But the point is, it's not so much not having expectations, the Bengali one says it, it's more like not being attached to the expectation. We all will have expectations, but we don't demand, we don't impose on us. So one of the fundamental virtues of bhakti is humility. And humility doesn't just mean we bow down to God or we offer respect to devotees. Humility means that even when we are in a relationship with someone, that person will not be humility, but we are not attached to our expectation to us. We have expectation that person starts in the relationship, not a person studying this, studying that. You have the expectation, but don't be attached to the expectation. So when we are doing like this, don't see it as our emotional deficiency. Oh, if I had been more pure, this person would have been. Depends. Because we are pure does not necessarily mean that that person is going to take a long jump in their spirituality. They are where they are, they go there. So humility, that virtue of humility, which we are expected to practice in bhakti. That means what? Not attached to our expectations. Yes, I have my expectations, but humility means not ready to not impose my expectations. And if we can exhibit this, then we will find that people will improve our influence. But then our influence will be positive. Sometimes Krishna will arrange for some influence from someone else. And that way, the person will know onward. Then summarize, we talked about 4 main points. The first point was, the first point I talked about how this verse says if we can see that if we have equal vision of seeing God in the control, then the first point is about the verse, then we will not degrade ourselves, but we will elevate ourselves. So the equal vision, what it means. And then I talked about how spirituality can improve our relationship. That was, we have the third person in the relationship. We don't just react. You did this to me, so I'll do this to you. We think, how can I please Krishna? The example of the attendant, a difficult customer, to the boss. So this is spirituality can improve our relationship. The third point I want to talk about is how sometimes spirituality can worsen our relationship if we start emphasizing feel too much, and that strains two and that strains one also. So what do? We give the other person space, and we treat each relationship as an independent relationship. And within that, we can, our pushing, when we pushing, it can help the unable. When somebody unwilling, then don't push them, because you may push them away. Or in pushing them away, you might also get pushed. So we understand that Krishna is in control, even when somebody is not having a relationship, or not wanting to pursue the relationship. And we let Krishna, and we in our relationship with him as responsible as possible. And the positive changes in us, making possible actually can transform them or inspire them to be transformed without our any overt pressure. Thank you very much. Hare
Hare Krishna.
Are there any questions or comments? Yes, please.
Still on.
Maybe you can come near here.
I'll repeat the question. Let me address this first. So is it that when we are in a relationship and the other person is also a devotee, but we are having whatever we are doing is not helping, and we decide to tolerate. But how long do we tolerate? How do we know what Krishna's will is at that time? So as I said, tolerance is important, but tolerance is not the only thing. The whole Bhagavad Gita, it contains this was Tam Siddhisha Sabhava, tolerate. But then tolerance doesn't mean that Krishna is saying that Arjuna, you tolerate all the atrocities of the Kauravas. Don't fight this one. The tolerance does not mean passivity. In that situation, the Pandavas had done everything humanly possible. They did everything divinely possible. Because even Krishna himself had gone as a peaceful. They had done everything possible to avoid the confrontation. Right? The Kauravas were bent on conflict. But there, when Krishna is talking about tolerance, you see, yes, it's difficult for you to shoot arrows at a rich man, but know that this is a for higher purpose. This is for the purpose of establishing. So there is this is what is this? The big thing is, as a warrior, it is your duty to establish. And that small thing is that you have to fight against your enemies. Why is it small? Because we are spiritual beings. You're not actually attacking them. You are freeing them from the situation where they have to fight on the bad side because of circumstances. So he's not saying that all the atrocities they perform are small things. So tolerance, as I said, is not passive. And when we are tolerating, it is important for us to be able to pursue the big things in life. If sometimes we tolerance, we are just feeling suffocated, if we completely miserable, or somebody is almost becoming suicidal. That time, tolerance can be toxic. It's not actually tolerance. It is because tolerance, as I said, it means to keep big things there. But if you're not able to survive also, then this passivity, there's toxic passivity. Very toxic is to create a distance. How exactly a distance is to be created, we don't know. That will have to depend on how it is. Distance. Sometimes different relationships work the best at certain distances, at different distances. And sometimes we go through phases and things are really difficult. We create the distance required for our safety. But that distance doesn't mean that we have to completely end up. And then sometimes the other person takes some steps forward, and some of the steps we take forward helps. So it is when I said we don't, when you mentioned that we don't know what Krishna's will is, yes, that is true. But broadly, we can say that Krishna is our well-wisher. Krishna is everyone's well-wisher. So, in one sense, the question, how can I serve Krishna? That can be rephrased as, how can I act to make things better? Because Krishna wants us to become better. Krishna wants us to become better. So, how can I act to make things better? Now, sometimes, maybe in that particular relationship, nothing I do is making things better. If there is something I can do to make myself better, maybe I can calm myself, maybe I can strengthen my connection with Krishna. Maybe I can do something which will stabilize me. And then later on, when I revisit this relationship, I'll be in a better position to understand what I can do to make things. Okay? Thank you. Yes, please. I was expecting that question. So when we say small things and big things, there are different people have different understanding of small things and big things. Okay, this understanding always different, but it's opposite. Yes. So in general, we have to recognize that what are the big things for us. And at least to some extent, we have to give importance. We don't have to completely change our values for that. But okay, this is so important for you. Yeah, I don't feel so important. I would normally not do it myself. But for your sake, and not that we are valuing a big favor. It's just that we have to acknowledge. Because every person is at a particular level in their spiritual growth. And then, according to the level they are at, certain things will be important for them. If a small child is making a sand castle on the top, a sand castle on the beach, and now sand will be destroyed in like when the tide rises. Why are you wasting it? And out of that, we go and destroy it ourselves. What kind of person are you? It is important for the child. That doesn't mean that we spend all our time, give up our job and start building like that. But we understand it is important. For the child, the child and science is very easy to understand. But just because we grow up does not mean that our mind automatically goes. We just have different ideas of what a science is. So, and we can't just destroy other people's emotions. Something to work with. So, and even we can say that for us also, even when we have some spiritual knowledge, that doesn't necessarily mean our understanding of what are the big things is completely aligned with reality. We also have our idiosyncrasies, our own peculiar priorities and things. So at least to some extent, so when I said give time for two, or invest whatever is required, that means something is important for the other person. You need time. So ideally speaking, we can find something which is important for the other person, which we can do without necessarily having to give up our spiritual values or transgress the thing that is important. But we have to be able to understand that not everything is equally important in spiritual life. In spiritual life is there is also hierarchy of importance. So what that means is, if we make everything important, we make ourselves important. Right now, I'm answering your question. I'm focusing on you. If while answering your question, I start focusing on everyone else, I have to make everyone equally important. I'll not even listen to anyone. So in spiritual life, also there are different things are different. So we have to find out what is it that connects me with Krishna the most. So if a particular thing connects me with Krishna. Say for example, somebody wants me to go to Valley. Right? And then okay. We said, no, I want to do that. And for them, that is what's the big deal? But if they're very worked up about it, they feel that it's very important, your values on values. And somebody wanting to eat only that, it is not as important as somebody telling you should never go to them, don't read, don't read. I'll throw away your feedback, I'll burn your feedback. It's very different. So even in spiritual life, some things are more important. So we need to also find out what we can adjust. And that also, so if we can have some honest discussion, and sometimes if we understand, we try to understand the other person. Then we can also find where this person comes, because there is something. And then that will help us compose with that person. Maybe help them also change their understanding of it. So we don't just assume that what is important for me will also be important for others. We need to be able to we need to be able to give due importance to what the other person considers important. Yes, please.
I've seen many cases where we have one and two growing family nicely, okay, but there is no chance of having three happening. What what happens in that? What
So our relationship with Krishna and our relationship with the other person is growing, but if we, the other person's relationship with Krishna is not growing. So we are happening sometimes. And there is a time when we take responsibility, and there's a time when we refuse to take responsibility. You can especially Prabhupada himself. Prabhupada, he shared Krishna Bhakti and inspired millions of people to become devotees. But his own family, and they were pious people. They also had duties, they were also worship. They were never dedicated to this. And but they were one part of their life. And also Prabhupada's failure that the family in the family. Ultimately, Krishna has given every soul free will. And sometimes some souls may use their free will to control Krishna to be, control the people. So if he is not happy, then that's okay. As long as two is there. Understand that life sometimes helps us grow in different ways. So sometimes if our family member is not practicing, then that may also help us to learn some humility or tolerance in a different way. It's very easy to be a humble with a person who's always obeying us. And that doesn't require humility. But it's only when a person doesn't listen to us, then what do we then get tested. You can see there are also some opportunity for our spiritual growth. And Krishna has a plan, and that person may take time. You can't really control it.
Without saying only justice can understand as I you. But the thing that when you want to compose, it won't work. So it means that I have to see what they say from their perspective. And then the more I do that, the more they will get inclined towards my way of thinking as a system conscious person starting to be not is this mantra going to work? Because my only concern is how to get the third person out of the relationship. So this must kill me. So if you see from their perspective, and that will make them acknowledge the fact that Mama understands us.
Yeah. This is a very difficult question. Suppose somebody is a teenager is difficult. It's true, but teenager is also in difficulty. It's not there are many reasons, but one simple reason you can say is that we all need a sense of identity. So if we are going through life, suppose if somebody is a child, then their identity is at a functional level. In the word identity, I am a son or daughter of so and that is their identity. When they become adults, at that time their identity is I have this degree, I have this job. Based on that, they have an identity. But when they are teenagers, they are too old to be satisfied with the identity simply that I am a son of so and so and daughter of so and so. And they are too young to have carved out their own identity. That's why they have an identity crisis. And that is the time they are very vulnerable to peer pressure. Because they want to belong to that social group. They want to be cool. Even if that means being a fool. No, that's a difficult thing of that. So one thing we need to do is don't overdo it. Even if they seem to be acting out, even if they seem to be even if they seem to be doing something which we find questionable or questionable, that we need to make sure that we maintain a relationship. So if we have raised them properly in childhood, they have to listen to that. Maybe they will explore, they will experiment. Sometimes some results of that, unfortunate results. But overall, in teenage, see, generally, in every relationship, we could say that there are two aspects to it. One is get the other person to the right place. And the other is maintain the right mood in the relationship or the right wavelength in the relationship. So both are important. And sometimes we may have to let the other person learn by experience. If suppose we tell you, I'm right enough. To me, one day you can crawl back to me and admit that I was right. And what happened is, then it becomes an issue of ego. Then they will just do the opposite of what we are telling them. And even when they realize that they're wrong, they will not come back. They will not admit. So it's difficult for us sometimes to see somebody whom we love and care for doing something which is wrong and coming to something. But sometimes maintaining the right spirit in the relationship may be more important than just getting the other person to do that. Now, I'm not saying always. There are some boundaries which have to be maintained. But if there are some boundaries which they want to explore, we would rather they not explore. That's okay. So, yes, try to give them good values, especially if we are spiritually minded and we want to help them from the spirituality. The best thing that parents can give children is happy memories of Krishna. Happy memories. Oh, when I used to go to the satsang, I used to see kirtan, I did this drama on Janmashtami, or we did this, we did that. Just give them happy memories. And if their memory is that, oh, parents made me wake up every day in the morning and do this, that, I would like to do it. If that is there, that is something negative, something unpleasant is their defining memory. Then later on, when they have to choose, I mean, these also we can push them a little. But once they become adults, we're not going to push them at all. Then if their prominent memories of Krishna Bhakti are negative, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do that. Or I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that, I couldn't do that. And when they can choose, they will choose to turn away. But if we give them happy memories of Krishna, then those memories will draw them back. Even if they experiment a little bit, they will come to it. And with respect to understanding them, sometimes the best help with respect to Krishna Bhakti is lateral. To some extent, teenage is the age where kids often reject their identity as son or daughter of saints. They want to grow out of that identity, but sometimes they reject that. That means that if my parents told me to do something, then I will definitely not do it. That's why if they can, if there is the parent, if the teenager. So rather than the parent telling teenagers, if we can create a forum of teenagers where, say for example, people have gone through teenage. They're not teenagers right now. If somebody is 15, 16, but somebody is 20, 25, and they have gone through that phase. And if they are spiritually inclined, if they talk about spirituality with those kids, they'll talk in somewhat in their language. And to some extent, these are the kids they will look up to. Okay, if somebody is practicing Bhakti, is also successful in their life, then they will see that, and then they will be able to connect with them. So instead of we letting speaking to them, with the vertical instruction, more of lateral input. So now, if we can have a community like that, if we have youth communities where youth come together and do various activities together, and within that they also have some devotional activities. In that case, we can do that.
My concept in Bhagavad Gita, wherever I see that it says bring that knowledge, this is the they agree to everything. And it's I know that it's the same thing from the same age, same era. Speech
Yeah, it's difficult. Sometimes you have to spend some time with children. Say, this is there, these are there. These are there. These are there.
Like,
Yeah, I just these are say, their interests. And these are bhakti activities. So find out somewhere where the creativity is. And sometimes it requires a little creativity. So I was at one devotee's house in America. They had a teenage boy. He was like a robotics genius. He's 12 or 13, and he was participating in international robotics competition. But he was not, his parents are wonderful devotees. He's not very interested. He was interested in childhood, but now he's not. So when I started talking with him, initially he was reluctant to talk. He thought like, I don't know, China, Krishna. So I started asking about robotics. And when I started talking about robotics, it was, he just, I think, so it was like the Ganga flowing from the Gangotri. What, when you make robotics, what do you do? So we generally make robots which are efficient movements, like walking, bending, lifting. But most of robotic industry is right now being funded by Amazon. Amazon wants to replace its workers with robots who can back and move things. So that's what we're. That's interesting. Oh, and what are the innovative robots that we make? Is innovation? Yes. Yeah, I will try to come up with some ideas. So I said, what if you make a robot where Krishna and the robot of Krishna and robot of Arjuna, and they speak some Sanskrit words, they speak Gita words. So he said, and then I continued walk away and I started talking with his parents. And after 5 minutes, he came back. And then it's not bad. Nobody else will think about this. And robot is quite innovative. And he said, now actually, in our college also there is school and college there is more of inclusivity and multicultural kind of thing. Then after a month, his parents called me. They said that now he's reading the Bhagavad Gita. Not because he's interested in Bhagavad Gita so much, because he's thinking which Bhagavad Gita verses can his robot speak. So sometimes we have to be creative in seeing how their interests can be connected with one. Oh, okay. Yes, please. Spoke about.
We spoke about tolerance and like we should see everything from the other perspective and what Krishna will see as like, what we will do to please Krishna. But like it's hard to tolerate things when we are in like great anger. So means that we speak anything and do anything without thinking, and then like our relationships they get like disturbed. So about that, what should we do?
There is something which we all have problem with. I have to consider if this is our consciousness. Sometimes our anger shrinks. Sometimes what happens, this urge happens. We just we want to, but we may not be able. So if that is happening and we're trying to control and not able to control, let's begin these. So, okay, at normal times, am I polite? Am I kind? Am I helpful? So if at that time we are well behaved, then people will also understand. Yeah, when this person gets angry, it come, they may overreact. But that's not a bad thing. So we have to begin with what is in our mind. Try to be polite, try to be helpful, try to be kind in normal situations. And then, as we do this, what will happen is we will start understanding other people more. Because when we try to be polite, kind, helpful, other people will open up to us. And then when sometimes they do something which would normally anger us. Is it normally anger? What will happen is we will think more about that. Not just you did something which angered me, but you also have emotionally, there's some reason why you did this. So as we start thinking about the other person more, then that itself will become an impetus for controlling it. It is rather than thinking I have to control my anger, we expand our consciousness to become more aware of other people. And then, for example, if I'm angry, I will throw this bottle down. But if I know that then somebody sitting over, I won't throw it. Because I'm angry, I want to vent my anger, I don't want to hurt you. So, but if I am blind, if I'm not even aware, just take it as I don't see things. So generally, when we try to connect with others better, then what happens is we, by not during a normal, we will connect with others better. Then we start becoming more sensitive to their feelings. We become more aware of how we actually are going to attend. And then it is not so much about we controlling ourselves, it is about we not hurting others. And then generally, the higher, the more selfless, the more nobler the motive we have for something, actually some inner power seems to come from us to be able to do it. So that means if I had to control my anger just because I don't want to be known as a short-tempered, but I want to control my anger because I want to be more helpful for others. I don't want to. So when we're thinking about someone else, it is the inner power becomes activated. So it is many people, they're told to you have some sickness and you take a medicine. They forget to take the medicine. But if some family member is sick, they will remember to give the medicine to others. What is for the family member? And people forget to take their own medicine, but if they have a pet cat or a pet dog, the pet dog is sick, they give medicine to that. So what happens is thinking about somebody else tends to make us more responsible. And the third thing we could do is if we know some situations when we become angry. Sometimes it's unpredictable, but over a period of time, it's predictable. And if we know that, then try to prepare for the situation. So if we know this person just tries to taunt me or provoke me, then try to avoid being with that person. Or try to avoid being with that person alone. When you start getting angry, maybe ask friend to go with that company. That's that going to come. Put the very thing. So we don't have to rely entirely on willpower or determination. We can try to provide assistance for us. So if we already know that 2 3 things have gone wrong for us, we are already irritated, volatile, and then we meet a difficult person, then we are likely to explode. So if you understand that, okay, I won't talk to this person. Let me talk to them. So it's like if I'm going first time on a road and there's a bump, boom, our vehicle just gets jolted. But if I'm daily going in that road and I know there's a bump, then before only we try to slow ourselves. So like that, if you can see patterns, when do I get angry? Then we can try to prepare ourselves. Okay.
Mike.
When you hurt someone and like that, and then afterwards we realize that and we tend to say sorry or like apologize, but the other person does not take the apology or like it's too hard to like accept it, then maybe
See, if we apologize, but other person doesn't accept the apology, when we get the karmic reaction? Well, we shouldn't think of apologizing as a means for cleaning our karma. We think more about apologizing for repairing the situation. Generally, there are 3 things we can do. First is apologize. Or even before apologizing, first is acknowledge. I'm sorry. Just saying, oh, sorry. Are you really sorry? Or are you just saying it because somebody told you to, or because it's a solution? So after I've spoken with this, and I told you, should not have, because we acknowledge the wrong. Then we apologize. After that, we try to make amends. Amend means try to do something to fix the situation. Try to do something nice for others. The words are important, but actions speak louder than words. So do something, if you know that person likes something, maybe we give them some gift on their birthday or something like that. We try to do something nice. If we do these three things, acknowledge, apologize, and amend. Then after that, if the person doesn't accept the apology, then we don't have to worry too much. Maybe they need some time to heal. And after that, they will get there. But we had done our part. Thank you. Somebody keeping the time. How much time can we go? So one question? Yeah. Okay. One or yeah, please.
What is
Parents and children should have friendship. So, well, first of all, it depends on what friendship means. You could say that broadly, in every relationship, there are two aspects. There is accepting and there is expecting. So we need to accept the other person as they are. But at the same time, we need to accept them, especially children. The parents should love the children as they are. But at the same time, the parents don't expect how the children want to grow. You have to learn proper behavior, you have to learn good habits, you have to do well in your studies, everything like that. So accepting and expecting both are different. So we could say, in general, in the Western world, parenting tends to be more accepting. I was at one American devotee house. His daughter was going to go into college. So I asked, what is she going to study in college? I don't think we have asked her to leave. So I was thinking, Indian parents not asking, but telling right for the maybe third year, fourth year. Once a court case, like, what is the matter? The wife said, I want my child to become a doctor. The husband said, I want my child to become a teacher. He said, I will check. What? The child is not yet born. Sometimes it's Eastern parenting, sometimes I think too much extent. It's not just Indian, even Chinese parenting is like that. So there needs to be a healthy balance between accepting this. So now how exactly that healthy balance will work? That will depend on the parent's nature, that will depend on the child's nature, that depend on the overall situation. But if a friendship, we mean that, like, how much expectation does a friend have from you? Well, not too much. There is some expectation. Certainly, I would say parents, the parental relationship with the child has more expectation. Not that the parents have more expectation of children. The children have more expectation from parents than what they would have from a friend. So friendship can be felt in the sense that we can seek for like candid communication. Just like we would talk with a friend. So if our children should not be constantly afraid of us. If they have made some mistake, rather than they hiding it, they have enough faith that we care for them. That we love them and we still accept them. So they will not find a conflict, they come and talk with them. In that sense, friendship is good. If that candid communication is there, then that can also help, especially in teenage years. Because at that time they also quite open a little bit. So friendship in that sense is good. But parenting is any kind of guiding, mentoring kind of relationship. It is different from just a friendly relationship. Because the set of accepting and expecting, that is the difference. So the whole purpose is that we want the other person to grow. If there is too much accepting, then what is happening is we are focusing on the present at the expense of the future. And if accepting as well, how will you become better for from the future. There's too much expecting, then we are focusing too much on the future at the expense of the present. And we that I want you to become like that. And the child starts feeling that unless you get this much marks or unless you do this, then my parents will learn. We don't want that. So that balance for that, sometimes we need to have candid conversation, understand what the children are thinking. And sometimes they may not live up to accept. Sometimes at that time, it's not chastising, maybe they need acceptance. If they are already feeling bad, oh, I couldn't achieve this, then you need acceptance. But if they're being nonchalant, oh, nice. No, it's simple. So based on the particular dynamic of the relationship, or the state of the mind, then accepting or expecting whatever is appropriate. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki
Jai.
Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Gaura Bhakti Vrinda ki
Jai.
So as I mentioned in the introduction, I have written a few books. So much of what I spoke today is from this book. This is Bhagavad Gita for Daily Mindfulness, 365 reflections based on different verses from the Gita. Each reflection is just one page with about 3 reflecting questions and 1 summary sentence, which is something which you easily contemplate, remember, recollect, and apply. And the 3 sections in this: nourish your life, nourish yourself, nourish your relationship, and nourish your devotion. So much of what I spoke also nourish your relationships. And then there are a couple of other books also. These are a part of the Gita. So this is the Gita from an applicational perspective. This is the Gita from a rational perspective. Like, study the Gita, if God controls everything, we really have free will. If we are to be equal to everyone, does that mean that we blind ourselves to the differences among them? So questions like this, 100 questions are answered with about 80 diagrams, simple figures that I was drawing. And this is the Gita from a relational perspective, where how the Gita can help us develop our personal relationship with Krishna. It is not just philosophy, it is divine love expressed through the medium of philosophy. So this is again 100 articles which can help us develop our personal relationship with Krishna. These are based on the mood of the 2 prominent commentators in the Gita. And then there's a calendar with 365 words. These are like humility to not be attached to our expectations from others. Or healthy relationship and what is the balance of expecting and expecting. There are quotes like this. This is a very accessible gift to give people who may not